All right, everybody, welcome to tonight's guest speaker. We have our student Naz presenting on internal and external strategies of cognitive challenges. I just wanted to give a little special shout out as we got all of this information and the presentation from the Brain Injury Association of Durham Region and their life skills presentation. Welcome, everyone.
All right, thanks, Claire. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about internal and external strategies of cognition. And to begin, I just want to start with providing some definitions, just so we're all on the same page. So what is cognition? And basically, this is an umbrella term that describes different mental processes that happens in the brain. So this would include orientation, attention, memory, and executive function. And we'll talk about all of these throughout the presentation. What is an internal cognitive strategy? This is a strategy that requires you to mentally process and think about information in a different way. So essentially what you're doing is reteaching your brain a new way to do something. So this is something that happens within yourself and is not a physical process. There's no physical aid involved in the internal. Anybody want to share any internal strategies that they might make use of? Okay, we'll move on to what an external strategy is. This is something that you can physically touch. So this is a strategy that exists outside of yourself, and it's also something that someone can do for you. So having someone actually remind you to do something is an external cognitive strategy. But we're going to talk first about orientation. Orientation is about involves knowing about our time, ourselves as a person, and place. So when we talk about time, we mean are we aware of the time of the day, the week, the month, the year? When talking about person, our awareness of who we are. And for place, how are we oriented to our circumstance? Or where are we? There's not a lot of internal strategies when it comes to orientation. One very common one would be repetition. And this involves talking with others about the time of day, the date, the season, or even talking with others about current events or personal information. There are lots of external strategies we can use in regards to orientation. Things like keeping a daily journal or a log, checking in on our clocks and calendars, using reminders. So physical reminders like Post-its, using our smartphones, alarms, using signage on doors and cupboards, going through photos and memorabilia, and generally just being familiar with our surroundings. And I think we're going to have questions towards the end, so I'll just skip to that. So moving on to attention. Attention is our ability to focus on a certain piece of information in a larger environment. So this can involve focused attention, sustained attention, selective attention, or divided attention. Some internal strategies when it comes to attention. One could be picking your time of day. So in a lot of cases, our brain deals better with tasks involving conscious, effortful attention. And so when picking our time of day, it's important to think about when your attention or energy is better for you. Is it better during the day? Is it better during the night? And then try and plan our tasks according to that time of day. It's also important to take breaks if we have trouble with attention, it's easy to get tired. So remember to take short brain breaks over the course of the day. It's recommended that about 5 to 10 minutes every hour just to start. But again, it's important to find what works for you and each person. That this might look a little bit different. Doing things one step at a time and breaking down tasks is a great way to maintain our attention. This would be doing things in a bite-sized manner. So try not to take things in too big of a step. Also avoid multitasking. That'll help us prevent being overwhelmed. And do things that you enjoy. It's easy to pay attention to things that you enjoy doing. Keeping a routine is a good way to maintain attention. As things become habits to us, they require less effort to pay attention. It requires less effort to focus. So having a morning or evening routine, a chore routine, that'll reduce our attentional demand. Also consider time pressures. When we rush through tasks, it can be a little bit hard to maintain our attention. So make sure when planning something, we're giving ourselves enough time to actually complete that task. Repeating new information, it's a lot easier to take in new information when we're doing it in small bits, just like we talked about earlier with doing bite-sized tasks. So it would be important to say aloud. We can summarize what this new information is by writing it down. And maintain attention when we talk to others. A good way to do that would be to speak slowly and clearly and face the person that we're talking to. You can also try to practice setting aside difficult thoughts. So what this means is if I have a task to do and in my mind I'm thinking about something else, something that's not important to the task at hand, what I want to do is maybe try and take a minute to realize that I need to focus on what needs to be done right now. When I'm done with that task, I can go on to the next thing. So this also goes back into avoiding multitasking and trying to really focus on one thing at a time. Let's talk a little bit about some external strategies when it comes to attention. One thing that we can do is to remove distractions. So a controlled, quiet environment reduces our attentional demands. So one of the ways that we can do this is we can limit the number of people in the room with us if we're doing the task. We can try and remove some unnecessary stimulations such as TVs, music, or radio. A lot of people like to wear noise canceling earphones if they're trying to get something done. But this is basically about controlling your environment, and this will reduce your attentional demand. Also, making sure your environment is clean and organized is a good way to reduce overwhelming yourself with unnecessary stimulations. Utilizing checklists, having step-by-step instructions help you support staying on task and staying focused. It's also a good visual aid that keeps you focused throughout a task. Having reminders are a good side-by-side reminder to help you stay on task as well. So again, you can use low-tech or high-tech options, timers, alarms, smartphone apps. You can also rely on others to help cue you to remember to do something. So maybe I'm reminding my partner to take her medicine on time, or I have somebody remind me to do a certain task. That's using an external strategy to help me stay on task. Visual cues, just like we talked about earlier with checklists, sometimes having that visual aid helps us keep our focus. So in this example here, we have highlighting important information as we go along. And let's move on to memory. Memory involves encoding, storing, and retrieving information. So this includes memories forms such as sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. An internal strategy used for memory would be the PQRST method. So let's say that we are reading an article or a passage of a book, and we really want to try and take in that information, to try and take in whatever it is we're trying to consume there. So first we would preview it. So read it once, try and just get a feel for it, skim through it. Next, we want to think about some questions that we might have as we go through it. Then we'll read it again, look for the answers to those questions that we just asked ourselves. Then try and state, so we want to say or write the answers to our questions. And then read it once again, just have a final check, see if you've found the answers to the questions that you're looking for. This is a really good method of helping to move information into your short-term memory. If we do it enough, we could even get into our long-term memory. It's also really important to remember to have patience when doing this. This could take time. If just looking through this, we're reading through that one piece of information maybe 3 times. So we want to have a little bit of patience, but at the same time, we'll remember that we're more likely to remember what we just learned if we try and utilize this method. Using visual imagery is creating pictures in your mind to help remember something. So in the example that we have here, I'm picturing my plants, and when I see that image in my head, then I remember that I need to water them. Another example that we have here, somebody gives us their name, Angela King. So in my head, I'm picturing an angel and a king. And when I see that image, I'm recalling their name a little bit easier. Association is a way to form a meaningful connection between something that you're familiar with and something that you want to remember. And repeating associations help move things into our memory. One example that we have here is, I want to remember when my friend's birthday is, and it's on December 31st, and I can remember it easier by associating it with New Year's Eve. It's a good trick to help remember birthdays, anniversaries. First letter cues and trigger words are ways to sort information by using the first letter of the word that we're trying to learn and memorize. In the example that we have here, we have a shopping list where all the items are written down, and then they are organized in alphabetical order. So we have apples, then bread, cream, dog food. This might help us recall that information easier when we're actually in the grocery store. And the same sort of concept for trigger words. In this example, we have a list of chores to do. So I would take those chores, I'd write them down, I'd use the first letter of each word to come up with a new word. So here we have disco. So we can see that each letter is a reminder for a task that we would have. So we remember to dust, refill the ice trays, go shopping, clean the bathroom, organize the papers. Rehearsal is a quite common internal strategy. So this involves repeating information silently in your mind, quietly to yourself, or out loud. This is helpful for quick, immediate recall. So somebody tells us their name and we want to recall it later in conversation, it might be a good trick to repeat their name in your head over and over again, or with a phone number. Repeat those digits over and over again. It'll help you quickly recall something. Utilizing active observation is a way for us to use attention along with our environment to encode something into our memory. So in this example, we've parked in a busy garage, maybe a mall. So maybe when we come out of our cars, we can look and see, look for a cue in our environment to remind us later where we parked. So which store am I outside of? That might help us recall that piece of information, like where we parked. Using rhymes, our brain is able to connect facts together with similar sounds. It's a lot easier to remember things when they have a bit of a rhyme or a rhythm to it. Like for example, we have here, a lot of people recall the month of the day, the months that have 30 days in the year by using the saying, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. Categorizing, grouping information into meaningful categories can help us recall large amounts of information. So for example, here we have a shopping list, and we divide that shopping list into different categories like dairy, produce, meat, bakery items. Story method is a way for us to, we create a story by using things that we need to remember. So for example, if I need to remember to feed the dog, call my mom, and pay the phone bill, a story that I could come up with was, the dog was hungry, so he decided to call my mother to get food, but he couldn't make the call since the phone bill hadn't been paid. So this could be something that's silly, that doesn't really make sense, but because we put it in a story and we put it in that way, it might be easier for ourselves to recall those pieces of information. Now, a lot of the external strategies for memories, we've kind of gone through them, so I'll just briefly touch upon them again. So utilizing things like calendars, journals, again, using high-tech or low-tech options, so something like a smartphone app or a smartphone calendar. You can also use organization stations in our own home, so having certain places in our home that are designated for certain items. And again, things like notebooks, a whiteboard, something that can help prompt us to remember to do a certain thing. If we have trouble recalling things in conversation, and it could be easier to remember if we use voice recorders or voice notes or things like voice to text. A lot of us might be using organizer, blister packs are great ways to remember the time of days or the amount of medicine that we're supposed to be taking. And again, if we have trouble misplacing things, smartphone applications, a lot of smartphones come with the Find My Phone apps or tile applications. These are some digital ways that we can link certain physical items that we have to our digital phones and can help us find them if we happen to misplace them. And an important one that we touch upon a lot today would be external cueing from others. So always remembering to ask others for help when we need it. Again, it's a great way to remember, having somebody by you that can either physically remind you to do something by telling you would be an easy way for you to recall information. The last bit of cognition, the last branch of cognition I guess we would talk about today is executive function. So this involves complex thinking, goal setting, planning, organizing, problem solving, and initiating tasks. When we talk about initiation, this is the skill of beginning a task. So it's not necessarily someone having a lack of motivation to begin the task. It's just difficulty to get going. So some internal strategies that we can use, like we mentioned before, bite-sized tasks, breaking things down into smaller tasks, remembering to take breaks, incorporating routines and mental rehearsals, so using repetition. Some external strategies, we can reduce distractions. So reducing the amount of stimulations in our environment. So trying to take control of our environment, using checklists, using reminders, and of course, external support. When it comes to planning and problem solving, again, a lot of these will be quite similar when it comes to internal and external strategies. So internally, we would, again, we want to try and break down these tasks, plan breaks and use extra time, visualize problems in advance, using mental rehearsal, talk aloud and brainstorm. Some external strategies would be, again, to write out the steps, using lists like pros and cons lists, and of course, external support by discussing your plans or problems with others. When it comes to goal setting, some internal strategies we can use would be SMART goals. SMART is an acronym for a specific, so which goal, what are we specifically trying to do? Measurable? Is it something that we can measure? How will we know when we achieve this? Achievable, is this something that we can do? Realistic and timely. When do we want to complete this goal? So always, again, remember to plan breaks and have extra time. Some external strategies to use would be to write down that goal, keep a to-do list, and again, as always, utilize that external support. So discuss your goals with others. And here's what we're talking about when we talk about SMART goals. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Now, the last part of executive function that we want to talk about is self-awareness and monitoring. So some internal strategies would be to check yourself. Ask yourself how you're feeling. Are you happy today? Are you sad? What's your mood like? Are you having negative or positive thoughts? Again, remember to take breaks often. And try and reframe your thinking if you're having negative thoughts. Some external strategies, again, things like writing down how you're feeling that day. So keeping a journal, and again, utilizing external support. So we want to seek feedback from others if we can. And just to summarize our talk from today about internal and external strategies, we want to start simple and small. So we obviously talked about a lot of different things that we can do today. Try and choose what you feel would be easy to you. So try not to overwhelm yourself, and choose just a few to begin with. And remember, trial and error is okay. So we want to keep practicing. Each strategy might be a little bit different for everyone, and the more that we practice it, the better. The more that we practice the strategy, the better at it that we're going to become. And of course, always remember to be kind to yourself. And like we talked about all throughout the presentation, ask for help. External support is really a key in helping prompt and remind us to stay focused, to stay on task. All right. And that is it for us on external and internal cognitive strategies.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to stop the recording and then we can go to questions.